Okay, so you would get an order from, let's say, Texas. Person would email or fill in the form on the website, and it would go to the entity in China. They would process the payment. If there was a problem with processing the payment, so the credit card number was wrong, or they actually had fraud rules in place, if the billing address and the shipping address didn't match, or if it was bounced back from the credit card company, they would send by email to these women in North Carolina the order, the person's name and address, the credit card number, the security code, all of the details, and these women would call or email the person and get the information that they needed. They also would check their Vonage numbers because they were answering, there's an answering voicemail service on there. And then they also had a customer care manual. So customer calls, they ask this question. Here's the answer you should give. Here are your standard responses. They set this up as a very serious business. And here we see their answers. These are their standard answers. The product was drop shipped. So they weren't dealing with, let's try and send 300-400 watches to the United States from China at one time. They would get an order, and they would individually fill that order from China. Employees were paid through prepaid ATM cards. And the ATM card was issued from a bank in the United States, and it was a web bank. So these women would have prepaid ATM cards, would go to the ATM, could draw out cash. Whenever they needed more money, they would email Tianzi Snitchu, tell them it's the end of the month, I need my pay, and it would be automatically deposited. What we found out later is that the automatic deposits were going through a bank in St. Kitts, to a bank in Canada, and then to this entity, ID Bill, who would give them the ATM cards. The services, so Vonage, Skype, internet service providers, registrars, they were all paid using credit cards. The credit cards were set up with false addresses, and all the credit cards were issued by the same bank in St. Kitts. Because of the bank secrecy and laws in St. Kitts, we were not able to obtain any additional information on who these cards were actually registered through at the bank. And then the customer service, again, it was very formal. You could return damaged goods. So if you got your replica watch and it was broken, you could return it to them. Or if you didn't like it, you could return it to them. And they had a whole network set up for these women to follow on how to get these goods back to them. And where are the orders coming from? Okay. So Tianzi Snitchu would send a list of customers through to these women. And we got these lists that they were sending through each week. And this represents just 1 week, so a period of August 13th to the 18th. These were orders that were placed on the low-cost replica site. They had problems processing these details. So this is not even all of the orders that they were getting. There were 102 that they had problems processing details for. The average amount of each order was $250. These are the states that were represented in the orders that came through in the email. And these are the countries that were represented. This is another site that the women worked on. There were 26 sites in total that they were acting as customer service for. This one is called 101 Watches. And just to give you some context, one of the sites that we found they were working on was getting 60,000 plus hits from the US alone a month. Another was getting 17,000 plus hits a month. And this site in particular was getting 2,000 hits a month. Tianzi, by mistake, sent one of these women their sales details for the year for this site. And we know it's by mistake because he later sent her an email asking her to destroy it. He hadn't meant to send it to her. And these are their figures. They brought in $1.3 million over 2006 from this one site. We issued subpoenas to Skype, Google, Vonage, WebAir, the banks. We sent subpoenas out to ENOM, all the registrars, Namecheap, AIT, IDBill.com. Everything we got back pointed to St. Kitts, pointed to Canada, pointed to false information. The Google Gmail hits that we got back, we asked for all of the email accounts. What are the IP addresses of the people who are accessing each of these accounts? And when we traced back those IP addresses, we found them literally being accessed from all over the world. AIT, as we were going through this process, contacted us and said they had a supplement to their production, that one of these entities that were listed had just tried to register, or had registered 1,000 new domain names. So we started going through the 1,000 new domain names, and we found this new site, Diamond Replicas. But for the first time, we also found sites for pharmaceuticals. So we started seeing that this entity was not just